Sonya Madsen Mills. I
I'm
got
sure
excited.
You've been called Madison before, but you know what? Anyway.
Go ahead, Geoff. How
I've
you
been
doing,
called all
buddy?
sorts of things, guys. At least you didn't call me Sonja.
Oh yeah, that's awful.
Not yet.
All the time. Happens all the time.
Yeah, my week was pretty good. I've actually finished my Christmas shopping.
Nice work.
Yeah, I
Look at you.
have to wrap still, but I finished my Christmas shopping. And how impressed are you, Sonya, on that? That a man has finished his Christmas shopping before December 1st, even before November 25th.
Here's my thoughts. It's probably not something you should admit. It's a little bit like when we had our firstborn and we didn't tell anybody he slept through the night at 8 weeks, because nobody wants to hear that or know that.
That's true. I like to get the praise, but I often joke that you know how Tarzan was raised by apes, and he's like, you know, I have 4 sisters, so I always say that I'm a guy raised by 4 sisters, and I can multitask, I can cook, I can clean, and now I can complete my Christmas shopping before November 25th.
That's amazing.
Well, there you go, Geoff. Nice work. I've also, so you know, completed almost all of my Christmas shopping. And that is because my wife has actually done all of it, and she hasn't told me what she wants for Christmas yet, so I haven't bought her stuff yet. So, so
You
there.
ever get to an age though, Allister and Sonya, where you don't need anything anymore, and it's just like, you know what? I just want some good quality time.
Now,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm a
How
big
about
fan
you,
of
Sonya?
I'm a big fan of experience gifts. I have to say it's a little bit more, better for the environment often, and you're creating memories that last a lifetime. So, yeah, I like doing experience gifts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We took our
Those are
boys
awesome.
last year. Their big gift was to go to an NBA game, and so we drove to Portland and went to an NBA game.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
I like that. I like that. Amazing. Well, let's not have Sonya continue to listen to us ramble on, Geoff. Let's get into it. Why don't you introduce our amazing guest that we've got today?
Well, we have Sonya Madsen Mills. She is with Madsen HR Consulting. A couple of things that I learned about Sonya actually today was that this woman has ran 12 marathons.
What?
Is that
Well,
true?
15.
Who's counting?
15. Yeah, way to go, Geoff. You get her, I get her last name wrong, and you get her accolades wrong. We're off to the wrong start.
15 marathons at her
Yeah.
tender age, and I think you said dozens of half marathons. So that within itself should be a great pod. But that's awesome. That's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
But Miss Mills here, or Mrs. Mills here, is the founder of Madsen HR Consulting. This is based out of Port Coquitlam. She has about 25 years of corporate HR experience and a commerce degree. She holds a CPHR designation since 2006. And I have a question for you, Sonya. What does CPHR mean?
Certified Human Resources Professional.
Okay, those acronyms always confuse me, but it's a certified
Human Resources Professional.
designation since 2006. She specializes in small and medium-sized businesses implementing HR strategies that provide structure, compliance, and a culture of large organization, which is something that's really, really missing in a lot of small and mid-sized businesses. And one of the reasons why we felt it was really important for Sonya to jump on to this pod and have a good discussion with us. Like even through the mortgage industry right now, we're going through a transition with BCFSA called the Mortgage Service Act, which is getting rolled out of October of next year. But again, compliance is such a huge thing that's being pressed on. And I know with a lot of these small businesses and medium-sized businesses, there is little or no compliance. There is little or no organization. We were talking a little bit about it today, Sonya. They don't even have employment contracts. So again, I thought it was a great time to say, are you tired of people problems taking up your day? I thought Mrs. Mills here would be great on answering some of our questions. And Here we go.
Nice.
Awesome.
Here we go. So what are my first question to you is Sonia, why is human resources so critical for small and medium-sized businesses? Because I believe a lot of our audience on this pod are in that bucket. They're either small business, medium-sized business, or even they're even thinking about starting their own business. So, being in human resources, what is so critical for these small and medium-sized businesses, or even people that are thinking about going into business?
Awesome. Yeah, I think you touched on that actually. And I would say it's one of the main drivers why I converted from being this, corporate HR professional to supporting small and medium businesses as a consultant, is knowing that all businesses of any size have legislative, legal, and human rights obligations. And many small employers are just not aware or familiar with what they are. And so even with really good intentions, their workplace practices, their employment relationships, their procedures may not be compliant or just ineffective. And so having a minimum of solid HR practices in place can really drive your profitability, enable your business to grow, reduce expenses, and then really overall mitigate your risks.
I guess my question is me being, I would classify my business being small business, is how does somebody connect with somebody like you to make sure that they are set up properly? And again, I go back to our transition with this Mortgage Service Act, which seems to be very, very overwhelming for the layman, me, but probably not so much for people, you, that specialize in that transition of getting you to where you need to be. Like, for me, I feel like I need to go and hire a third party just to give me a roadmap to say, hey, this is French to me. This is, everyday stuff for you. I just need a simple roadmap to kind of get my business to where it needs to be. How does that work? And how does that work with Madsen, with your company?
Well, I think what we do is I tailor the HR solutions really to focus on practical and affordable essentials. And so I try not to, over prepare or provide more than a business is needing. So the first thing I do is I have an essentials first approach. So using tools like our HR Essentials Toolkit that covers off some of those critical policies or compliance basics that they may need. I offer flexible packages. So, looking at offering one-time project support, but also being willing to consider retained services. So, we're going to only have you pay for what you need. So we're not looking, a lot of the HR services are available, are subscription based. So you're required to pay whether or not you utilize them. And to me, that isn't a great service to small businesses. We're all looking to, optimize where we spend our money. And, as a small business, I don't want to be, tied into a solution that I'm not going to take advantage of. The other thing I offer is really customized solutions. And so I think that's where the differentiation and what really has an impact for small businesses is that you don't want a template. What you want when you're getting the solution is a plan, a program that's actually adapted to your business, your size, the situation, and the goals you're trying to achieve. It's going to be branded with your branding. It's going to be written in the language that makes sense for your business and your audience. And then I try to provide expert clarity. So I really want to provide simplification to some of those tricky issues with really straightforward advice to save you time and reduce stress. A lot of times it's really breaking the issue apart and just coming up with some logical steps. I find often that with business owners, when they're faced with an HR issue or a people issue, they're so caught up in it because it's their business and it's something that's potentially affecting them directly in the working relationship or interpersonal dynamics. And it's really hard to remove yourself from that and just see it from the high level and put a solution to it.
And is there I'm just thinking as you're talking and I'm like, is that as far as the cost of that, is that an hourly cost? Is that a set price? Like, how does the pricing work on all of that?
Yeah, I sort of take things both ways. So I have 3 packages with very specific price points just to make it very easy for business owners. So my first package is HR Aid Station, which is essentially your HR phone a friend. It's the, hey, I'm in a situation that I don't quite know how to deal with. I find that business owners are often dealing with that as it relates to an interpersonal situation where they think maybe they have an investigation that they need to handle. Or in many cases, it's, I think I need to terminate somebody, but I'm not sure of all of the steps or what my obligations are. And that's a great solution for them that I can sort of help walk them through and give them the pointers of what they need to do. Mm-hmm. My most commonly used product is the HR Essentials, which is giving you a set of 3 items that sort of set you up for success. So it's your employee handbook or ways of working guide that includes all of the things that you need to communicate to your staff about how your business operates. And it also includes a set of policies. We also include a employee records checklist to make sure that you're sort of covering off the basics, and then an onboarding template. I find that a lot of businesses, even when they have some of those essentials in place, such as their the contracts and the job descriptions, they actually don't have any process in place for onboarding their staff. And then they wonder 3 months later why their team member that they've hired isn't impactful, and they're not catching on or they're not learning. And when you dig through that, sometimes you find out that they weren't really set up for success. You know, they didn't actually have anybody to train them or show them the ropes or answer questions. So having a 30, 60, and 90-day onboarding plan can help optimize that new hire.
Yeah, you hear that. I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And my last package is the strategic scan, which is actually for more mature businesses that probably have those essentials in place, but they're growing, their business is changing, and they're realizing that they're looking to optimize. And so it's actually taking a scan through all of their practices, giving them a report to say, here's where your health-wise is in all of these areas. Here's what you should continue working on. Here's maybe what we should enhance. And actually, here's where you have some gaps, and we need to fill those gaps. And so those are my 3 bundled packages. But the other thing I do is I will do just project-based work where a client might come in. I had a client, it was a returning client, but they actually had some administrative tasks regarding a grant that they just could not get the work done. And it was sort of like, let's agree on some hours and a minimum amount of hours, and I'll just get the work done for them. So
nice.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, I have a question. What are some of the most common people problems that small business owners are facing right now?
Yeah, what I've uncovered is, I mean, there's probably as many problems as you could think of in your world, probably dozens or hundreds, but I would say there's probably the top 4 most common. So maybe I'll share with you those. I had prepared a few more than that, but I think the top 4 would be good. So as you had mentioned, Geoff, no employment agreements. And a big problem with not having employment agreements is when things go sideways. And so in the event of a termination, when you don't have an employment agreement, that could result in common law severance risk. Okay, so you let somebody go, you have to provide them their minimum notice under the Employment Standards Act. But in Canada and in BC, the common law prevails unless you have a termination clause in your employment agreement that limits their notice to the employment standards. And so the general standard for that is anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks for every year of service. So you can imagine parting ways with somebody who's been there for 5 months, or pardon me, for 5 years. Your ESA notice is going to be 5 weeks. But then on top of it, you might be having to give them as much as 20 additional weeks of common law severance. That's very expensive for a small business. So the solution there is having enforceable employment agreements to limit the severance exposure and just clarify all the terms of employment. The second one I would say is unintentional discrimination through certain acts. So things like within job ads, within the interview process, or within interactions with workers. I mean, of course, sometimes discrimination is intentional, but more commonly, it's very unintentional. But as an employer, it's really important to having an expert to help you understand the BC Human Rights Code, to do things like have somebody review your job postings, or to support you by having a really detailed recruitment guidelines, so you're not inadvertently asking questions that are a violation of the BC Human Rights Code. The third one would be not handling a conflict or a misconduct with a proper investigation. So it's always that very awkward. Somebody came and said something, they've complained about it, and you just don't know how to handle it. Maybe you brush it off as, oh, it's just an interpersonal thing. They'll figure it out. And the fact of the matter is you have an obligation to have a safe work environment. There's even work safe legislation that you don't have an environment where an individual is being bullied or harassed. If you aren't able to provide that, they can make a claim under WorkSafe BC. So you need to, when you have those complaints, conduct impartial investigations, document the findings, and resolve it, and ensure that you're documenting it so that you can demonstrate it if you are challenged. And then the last one I would say is businesses that don't understand the difference between an employee and an independent consultant.
There we go.
The number of small business owners that I have met with who say, I don't have any employees, but I work with 4 or 5 independent consultants. And when you ask a few more probing questions, it's very clear that those independent consultants are actually employees. And their Canada Revenue Agency does not take kindly to businesses that avoid payroll tax. And so the implications of inaccurately classifying somebody as an independent contractor when in fact they're an employee, could be found to require to pay back taxes, but also penalties. So it's not good to get into the bad books with CRA. So follow the guidelines for self-employed person. It's a very easy checklist. And if they don't match the definition of an independent contractor, then you should be hiring them as a permanent or a term employee and paying the appropriate tax.
I've had 2 jobs in my whole life. I started working in a clothing store when I was 15 years old or 16 years old. I left when I was 42. And we rolled in, I became responsible by introducing employment handbooks, contracts, but I could just imagine if this company did not have it, I would have actually been very fearful for the owner just for the fact of the mess that he could have got himself in. So it leads to my next question, like what are the basic elements that every business should have to protect themselves against risk? And you may have kind of touched on some of those already.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think first and foremost, we've all agreed that having clear, legally compliant employment agreements for every worker is really important. And then you want those to have the clauses in place that protect your business. So your employment lawyer can quite easily draft that for you and ensure that those clauses make sense for you and your business. The next thing you want to have is an employee file where you're just saving all of those necessary documents, saving the agreement, saving any benefit forms, saving any sort of email or communication between you and the worker. It's just convenient for you to have, if there is ever a claim, you have everything in a nice place. Every employer should have a basic set of policies. And I'll tell you the ones that you should have. You can have more, but you should all have a code of conduct policy, privacy and confidentiality policy, fitness for work, which is essentially, you're not showing up under the influence, a bullying, harassment, and violence policy, and a leave in attendance policy. If you can have those policies, all the other ones are, a little bit more less important, but those ones are table stakes. I always recommend that you would still have more of a handbook, guidelines, and ways of working. Things like, how do you deal with inclement weather? If it's about to snow in the Lower Mainland and we've all agreed that nobody should drive, is your worker getting paid that day? I mean, what are your guidelines around that? So that's not really a policy, but it is certainly a guideline. You should have job descriptions for every role, and that should actually typically be a part of the appendix to the job description. You should have an infamed payroll processor. So if it's not you, it should be your bookkeeper or somebody else who is ensuring those proper calculations of vacation time and pay and stat holidays and overtime. Every business is covered under WorkSafe BC. So just make sure you understand what your obligations are and have those basic emergency procedures and know your obligations for reporting an incident or a near miss. And then I would say ensure that the complaint procedure is clear so that staff know who to channel if they have a concern. At least they know who to go to and what the steps will be. And then the last one would be that onboarding and training. So you want to ensure that your new hires understand what the business is about, what your goals and priorities are, how it operates. and then also the expectations of the role.
So I, much like Geoff, my past life was in retail. I was director of Western Canada for a company, and I've been through a few companies in the past. Ones that HR and the retail end used to fight quite often, and ones where, you know, HR, we had such a great relationship because we did understand just how important both sides were to with each other. If you're starting, so if somebody were to be starting a business right now from scratch, what's the first HR step they should take?
I mean, I think first and foremost, you know, when they think back to the why they are in business and ensuring that their staff is very familiar with that why and is driving that culture on their behalf. So I think first and foremost, just engaging your team in your business so that they're passionate about it, and you're doing that through an effective onboarding program. And then I would say having those basic elements in place that I already referred to. And then as a continuation of that, maybe considering adding a basic performance management framework. So how are you evaluating your staff and giving them feedback so that they know how they're doing, and how they're performing, and how their compensation is tying into that? Because people feel more connected to their work when they understand why and how they're paid.
How often do you think businesses should do annual reviews? Well, annual meaning annually, but how often should they be reviewing their employees based on your experience?
Yeah, so my experience is I think the annual process is a good one, in that typically businesses are setting their business priorities each year. And so it's a great way to, once those priorities are set, to sort of step back and say to an individual, how are you going to contribute to that? You know, let's set 3 or 5 goals that you're going to help drive this corporate strategy. But best practice is that you're regularly checking in, right? And you don't have to necessarily book a separate meeting for it, but in your normal one-to-one meetings, you know, take that moment to grab that list of goals and sort of see how they're tracking towards it. And by asking questions, right? Finding out if they're having any hurdles they need to overcome, or what's working well, or what do they need support with, and starting to track their progress, or letting them know that business priorities have changed and in fact they need to alter their goal, right? So I think that having an annual review and sort of coming back and saying, hey, yeah, this year went well, and I would say you really fully met my expectations, but along the way you've had, you know, several conversations. And they can be short. They don't have to be, you know, 2-hour-long conversations.
Right. And I think the key is always document, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Since you are the expert in human resources, I'm going to ask you this. What should all businesses, small, medium, big, pay attention to in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, so there's always trends that are happening, and some that are very like regional and specific to, you know, BC and Canada, and some that are just sort of best practice considerations, right? And so in BC, I would say we want to be paying attention to, you know, sick leave and minimum wage. You know, we're often getting updates on the minimum wage, but there's also new rules around medical notes, credential recognition, and new workplace compliance standards. So I'll go through a few of those. Recently, since COVID, employers are now required to give 5 paid and 3 unpaid sick days per year under the BC Employment Standards Act. It's been a couple of years now since we've had that, so I do think employers are used to it. One thing that employers may not know, though, is that those 5 days are based on each occasion, and it doesn't matter how long they are. If a worker leaves for 2 hours, that counts as 1 sick day. So there is a difference between the 5 paid sick days, and it doesn't equate to 40 hours. So just helpful for employers to know that. As of November 2025, employers can no longer require a medical note for the first 2 short-term absences of 5 days or fewer. And that's really driven because we're looking to not overburden the healthcare system. So that's a really important one. And a lot of employers' leave of absence handbooks and guidelines often speak to a requirement to have a doctor's note if your absence exceeds more than 3 days. Under the BC Employment Standards Act, that's no longer required or allowed. The Patient Transparency Act, which is really dependent on the size of your business, requires employers to include wage and salary ranges in their job postings. And importantly, it prohibits you from asking candidates about their past compensation to then help you determine how much you want to pay them. So that's a very important one to be familiar with. And a new one that I just learned about was the International Credentials Recognition Act, where employers can no longer require Canadian work experience in their job postings across 18 regulated professions.
Oh.
So that's a very important one. And just in general, we should all expect stronger requirements around safety and employee protections, and of course, changes to the minimum wage.
What is minimum wage today?
I want to say it's $17.85 an hour. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere around there. Yeah.
Oh. So I love HR. Some of my I truly do. I have some great friends from my past life that were VP and heads of HR. So I love HR to death. And it actually brings me to my next question is, because I have my opinions on it and how important it is, but in your opinion, how does strong HR structure contribute to the growth in employment engagement?
So it's interesting. Employee engagement. Yeah, I got you, man. It's interesting though, because as much as I've always been an HR professional in my professional 25 years of working experience, it's almost all of it been as an HR professional, but I've also been an employee. And so I've had the experience of what the, an organization that handles its human resources well and others that do not. And I think that where there's a strong structure and a strong culture of sort of putting people first and considering the employee experience, it fuels your business growth because you're giving employees clarity, you're giving them a sense of fairness and the sense of direction of what it is they're supposed to be doing. And that is going to help the business be successful. And it's going to mitigate things like, risk and turnover. So I would say that that's one big reason. I also think you get a really consistent framework for performance and a level of trust within the workplace culture that keeps people engaged and really invested in the business. I've personally worked in organizations where people were really passionate about the workplace culture and they had a resiliency to change or to the fluctuations of the business success because it was a heavy trust environment. And that came from the culture, which was really driven by frankly, the HR within the organization. And I've worked at places where they didn't have that resiliency and they didn't have that trust. And there was an observation of there's a lot of chaos in management and a lack of inconsistency in the HR practices. And that was very evident, not only in the people experience, but in the business results.
Yeah, I'm with you. I worked for Nygaard a long time ago. And so that is one of those. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about with human resources, craziness and nightmare. Yes.
When it comes from the top.
Right. But shout out to Neil Pritchard. He actually listens to this. Shout out to Pritch. He was the vice president of HR and he did the best he could. He was amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That must have been an awful experience.
It really was for him.
Yeah.
Well, and Sonya, I know you touched on this, but I know as I'm listening to this, and I can almost assure you lots of people that are listening to this and they're thinking, oh my Lord, I have to start doing something different in my business. But I don't have deep pockets like this. This again, I have limited resources. And I know you talked about your pricing, but if you could just remind our listeners that if they are in a human resource need and they need you, Sonya Madsen Mills at Madsen Consulting, how can I come to you with limited resources and how can we make this thing work?
For sure. So as I mentioned, my HR aid station, which is $225, it's a one-on-one conversation where you just walk me through your problem. Honestly, think of it as phone a friend. I have this situation. I don't know how to deal with it. And that calling your lawyer is going to cost you $500 an hour at minimum. And not every employment situation requires the call to your lawyer. So you can call me. I'll walk you through the issue and essentially create a report for you that outlines all of your next steps. I'll provide you with the links, the resources you need, and certainly the direction you need to take. And all of that is for one, flat fee. If you wanted to engage me with other services because you realize you need support, then we can speak about, the pricing of that in a separate proposal. The HR Essentials is probably the most value-added service I offer because it's that customized handbook. And when I say customized, I think my handbook is around 40 to 60 pages long. It is that detailed, and it is fully customized to your business, policies that make sense for your business. So I've created those for wellness firms and insurance brokerages, and a plumbing trades person. So, I can diversify the handbook as needed, as well as that onboarding toolkit. And I'm even willing to be flexible with the other service. I had one that didn't really need the employee records checklist. So we switched it out and did a very basic performance management toolkit for them, just so that they could set some goals and have a nice form for tracking them in a digital way.
And I would probably encourage our listeners, whatever that cost is going to be to set their company up right with you, is probably going to be a lot cheaper than if they have to go through the Employment Standards Act or any kind of tribunal and pay it out that way, right? So,
yeah, or to get or to just get that support from your lawyer. I mean, just any sort of like basic consultation with a lawyer is $1,500 to $2,000 just to kind of have the consultation. And you're right. I've met a few small business owners through our mutual BNI connection, Geoff, and they've had some horror stories with rulings from the BC Employment Standards branch. So it's not fun.
Yeah, you don't want to get in trouble with those people.
No, and they're for employers that don't realize it, their rulings stand. Like, you are obligated to, even if you don't think it's fair.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. What's one piece of advice then you'd give to a small business owner who thinks that HR is just paperwork and annoying?
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure you feel maybe the same way as sort of this like consultant and service provider, that sometimes you have to maybe justify a little bit, how your profession adds value. Yeah. And I think, the line that I like to use is that HR is really a framework that protects your business, but also empowers you. And so my advice is really, treat HR or an HR expert as your strategic tool. It's not a chore. Having strong policies, clear agreements, and fair processes, it's not only about keeping you compliant. It's actually about building trust within your team, creating a foundation for growth and engagement, and then ultimately reducing your risk.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. So I agree.
And a lot of us are, overly friendly HR ladies, so we're fun to have around.
They truly are. That's what I'm saying. When I say some of the best people are in our HR, it's not a lie, man. They're good peeps.
Yeah. Well, hey, we end a pod off with our guest. I call it the 30-second. It's like rapid fire. So Are you ready?
I am. I'm nervous.
Jeez, I was going to say, that sounded nervous.
Allister, put the clock on.
Okay, the clock is going and go.
Tell us who you are.
My name is Sonya Madsen Mills, and I'm a mom, and I'm a wife, and I'm a sibling, and I'm an outdoor enthusiast, and I'm an HR professional.
And what does your business do, and who does it help?
So I provide people-related consulting to small and medium-sized businesses who do not have an in-house or in-person HR professional.
And what is the name of your company?
Madsen HR Consulting Services.
How do we get a hold of you?
You can email me at sonya@madsenhrconsulting.ca. And you can also send a request by going to my website, www.madsenhrconsulting.ca.
And people who are old school, your phone number is?
604-842-8199.
And one last question, and I had it, I lost it. Who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is a smaller, medium-sized business. So that is a business under 100 employees where there is no internal HR, who is needing to build a framework and a foundation to their people practices. I would love to engage with professional service firms. So whether it's accounting firms, insurance brokerages, property management firms, I would really like to spend more time with the trades and with small business trades owners, and as well, anybody in manufacturing, fabrication, light industrial who could benefit from my expertise.
Nice. Sonya Madsen Mills of Madsen Consulting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allister and Geoff. This was a lot of fun.
Well, we had a lot of fun having you. Thank you so much. I mean, it's true. Like HR is a super, super important part of everybody's business. If you do small, medium, large, everybody should have an HR component to it. Not just because it does help you with compliance, which it does. In my opinion, I'm the biggest believer of HR in terms of growth and development of your business and the people inside of it. So that's why I'm such a fan of HR. So
awesome.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate the time with you guys today, and looking forward to spending time actually listening to the other chapters of your podcast.
That's awesome, and we hope to have you back actually for another pod sometime. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah.
You got a lot of binge listening too. I think we're on episode 77.
No, this is 78 we're shooting right now, Geoff. That's it.
I'll throw in the earbuds when I'm on a long run, and it's a good way to spend my time.
15 marathons.
I know, that's crazy. Amazing. Well, with that being said, thank you everybody as always for taking the time to listen to us today. We're so happy that you make us part of your week, and we hope that we continue to deliver all of you guys a valuable content that we promised to give you guys. So, with that being said, Geoff, stay empowered, stay informed, and most importantly,
stay tuned.
That's right, baby. Stay tuned. Peace out.